Over the rooftops of Stoke-on-Trent, it is Christmas Eve, 1945. The Second World War has been over for only a few months. Across Britain, people are trying to adjust to peace. Bomb sites still scar many cities. Food is rationed, coal is precious, families separated by war are attempting to build normal lives again. In a modest house in the Staffordshire pottery town, a baby boy enters the world. His name is Ian Fraser Kilmister. The child, who will one day become known simply as Lemmy, has no idea that his distinctive voice, battered Rickenbacker bass, and thunderous music will make him one of rock's most recognisable figures. For now, he is simply another post-war baby, born into a country rebuilding itself brick by brick. Outside, the winter air is cold and damp. Smoke rises from hundreds of chimneys. The smell of coal fires drifts through the streets. Factory whistles sound across the town. Workers trudge through puddles in heavy boots, their breath hanging in the freezing air. This is the Britain into which Ian is born. His father, Lemmy Kilmister, has served during the war as a chaplain in the Royal Air Force. Educated, thoughtful and deeply religious, he seems an unlikely figure to father one of rock's greatest rebels. His mother, Jessie, is intelligent, independent and determined. She works as a librarian and possesses a quiet strength that will shape her son's life far more than anyone can yet imagine. Because before Ian is old enough to remember his father, Sydney is gone. The marriage does not last. When Ian is still a small child, his parents separate. His father disappears from daily life, leaving Jessie to raise her son alone. Years later, Lemmy speaks about the absence with little emotion. Yet growing up without a father leaves its mark. Throughout his life he admires strength, self-reliance and independence. Those qualities begin forming early. For now, though, he is simply a boy growing up in post-war England. The streets around him are grey but busy. Delivery carts rattle over uneven roads. Steam rises from railway engines. The smell of wet stone mixes with coal smoke. Shop windows display only modest goods. Rationing still limits what families can buy. Britain in the late 1940s is a country of shortages. Sugar is precious. Meat is limited. New clothes are expensive. Families mend and repair rather than replace. Yet there is optimism too. As Ian grows, he becomes a curious child. He enjoys reading. He loves stories of adventure and military history. Battles, uniforms and heroic figures capture his imagination. The war has only recently ended, and its memory is everywhere. Former soldiers fill the streets. Newspapers carry stories about the conflict. Children play games inspired by events they barely understand. Young Ian listens carefully. He watches people. He absorbs everything. Friends and family later remember him as intelligent, observant and stubborn. If he decides something is true, persuading him otherwise is difficult. That determination will eventually become one of his defining traits. When Ian is still young, another major change arrives. His mother remarries. The family relocates to Newcastle-under-Lyme, a nearby market town. Though not far from Stoke, it feels different to a child. New streets, new neighbours, new routines. For many children, such changes are unsettling. Ian adapts. He learns to rely on himself. The post-war years continue to shape the world around him. Across the Midlands, factories dominate the skyline. Tall chimneys release smoke into low grey clouds. Trains carry coal, pottery and manufactured goods across the country. Children grow up understanding that nothing comes easily. School reflects this world. Classrooms are strict. Teachers expect obedience. Corporal punishment is common. A ruler across the knuckles or a clip around the ear is accepted as normal discipline. Children stand when spoken to. They learn not to answer back. Ian struggles with authority, not openly at first, but the seeds are already there. He questions rules that seem pointless. He dislikes being told what to think. While many children simply accept the system around them, Ian quietly pushes against it. The Britain of the 1950s values conformity. Ian does not. At home, books become an important escape. His mother encourages reading and learning. Through books, Ian travels far beyond the smoky towns of the Midlands. Ancient battlefields, distant countries, and great adventures fill his imagination. By the mid-1950s, another major change approaches. Jessie decides to leave the Midlands behind. The destination is North Wales. For Ian, it means leaving familiar streets, friends and schools. The industrial landscape that has surrounded him since birth is about to disappear. Ahead lies a coastline of beaches, cliffs and open skies. The move will transform his life. The grey smoke of Stoke-on-Trent will be replaced by sea air. Factory whistles will give way to the cries of seagulls. And somewhere beyond the horizon, a new sound is waiting. Rock and roll, waiting for the boy who will one day become Lemmy. The family settles near the coastal village of Benlech on the island of Anglesey. Life moves at a slower pace than it does in the factory towns of England. Farmers work the fields, fishing boats bob in small harbours. Summer visitors arrive to enjoy the beaches before disappearing again when the colder weather returns. Ian explores constantly. He walks along the coastline. He climbs hills overlooking the sea. He spends hours alone with his thoughts. The isolation suits him. He has never been a child who needs constant company. Instead, he watches. He listens. He observes the people around him. At school, he often feels different from those around him. He is intelligent and outspoken. He questions things. Sometimes teachers appreciate that curiosity. Often they do not. The classrooms remain strict. Discipline is expected. Rules are rarely explained. But Ian continues asking questions. The habit of challenging authority is becoming stronger. Years later, millions of fans will see Lemmy as the ultimate rebel. The image appears effortless. Yet its roots can be found here in schoolrooms, where a stubborn teenager refuses to accept every rule simply because someone tells him to. Outside school, Britain is changing. The grey years immediately following the war are beginning to fade. Young people have more spending money than previous generations. New fashions appear. New attitudes emerge. Teenagers are becoming a culture of their own. Most importantly, new music is arriving. At first it comes through radios and records imported from America. Then it seems to explode everywhere at once. One day Ian hears the voice of Elvis Presley. It sounds unlike anything he has ever encountered. The music is energetic, dangerous and exciting. It feels alive. Soon there are others. Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry. The records carry a sense of freedom that fascinates him. Rock and roll is not merely music, it is an attitude, a challenge, a declaration that life can be louder, faster and more exciting than the one mapped out by parents and teachers. Ian is captivated. Like countless teenagers across Britain, he begins buying records whenever he can afford them. Music becomes an obsession. He studies album covers. He memorises songs. He follows the careers of his favourite performers. The soundtracks of American youth drift across the Atlantic and arrive in small Welsh towns, changing lives in the process. Meanwhile, another interest begins demanding his attention: girls. Ian grows into a confident teenager. Tall, charming, and surprisingly articulate, he discovers he enjoys female company immensely. Friends later joke that this becomes one of the great constants of his life. Music and women. Women and music. The order varies, the interests do not. Dance halls become an important part of teenage life. On weekend evenings, young people gather beneath coloured lights. Cigarette smoke drifts through crowded rooms. Records spin on turntables. Couples dance to the latest songs from Britain and America. Ian rarely stays on the sidelines. He enjoys conversation, he enjoys attention, and he enjoys the excitement that comes with youth. At the same time, another revolution is unfolding. In 1962, four young men from Liverpool released their first single. At first, they seem like just another group. Then everything changes. The Beatles become a phenomenon. Suddenly, Britain is swept by a wave of excitement, unlike anything it has experienced before. Newspapers cover every move they make. Teenagers copy their hairstyles. Record shops struggle to keep albums in stock. For aspiring musicians, the message is unmistakable. Ordinary working-class boys can become stars. The dream no longer belongs exclusively to Americans. It belongs to anyone brave enough to chase it. Ian watches carefully. The success of the Beatles is followed by dozens of other British groups. New bands appear almost weekly. Music is becoming the centre of popular culture. The world feels full of possibilities. Around this time, Ian acquires the nickname that will follow him for the rest of his life. The exact details vary depending on who tells the story, but the explanation becomes legendary. He is often short of money. Whenever he sees a friend, he asks the same question. "Lend me a quid? Lend me a pound?" Eventually people stop calling him Ian. They simply call him Lemmy. The name sticks. Few people realise that one day it will become one of the most famous names in rock music. As his teenage years progress, school becomes increasingly unimportant. His attention drifts elsewhere. Music occupies his thoughts. The future being offered by teachers and careers advisors feels unimaginably dull. Office jobs, factories, predictable routines, none of it appeals to him. He wants adventure. He wants excitement. He wants the life promised by the records spinning on his turntable. By the early 1960s, Britain stands on the edge of a cultural revolution. Fashion, music and attitudes are changing faster than anyone can remember. Lemmy intends to be part of it. Soon, he will leave school behind. Soon he will begin drifting through the strange and colourful world of musicians, roadies, artists and dreamers. It will not be an easy path. There will be poverty. There will be chaos. There will be mistakes. But there will also be music. And for Lemmy, that makes all the difference. As the sun sets over the coast of North Wales, the sea turns gold beneath the evening sky. Waves roll steadily towards the shore. Somewhere beyond that horizon lies London. Beyond London lies the wider world. And Lemmy is already looking towards it. The year is 1965 and Britain is changing. The optimism of the post-war years is giving way to something new. Young people are creating their own culture, driven by fashion, music, and a growing belief that life does not have to follow the old rules. For Lemmy, who has spent his teenage years dreaming of adventure, it is the perfect moment to leave North Wales behind. Money is often short during these years. He drifts between jobs, rented rooms and various bands, determined to build a life around music. The reality is far less glamorous than the records suggest. Musicians spend long hours travelling, loading equipment and performing for small audiences. Yet Lemmy loves the atmosphere. Every rehearsal room, club and concert hall feels closer to the future he wants. One of his most remarkable opportunities comes when he works as a roadie for the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Watching Hendrix perform night after night leaves a lasting impression. The sheer volume, confidence and power of the performances show Lemmy what a great rock musician can be. Years later, he still speaks of Hendrix with enormous admiration, describing him as one of the finest performers he ever witnessed. By the early 1970s, Lemmy is still searching for his breakthrough when he joins Hawkwind, one of Britain's most unusual rock bands. Their music combines heavy rock with science fiction themes and long, hypnotic performances. Concerts are filled with flashing lights, clouds of smoke, and walls of sound. It is a perfect fit for Lemmy's personality. Although he joins as a bassist, he soon becomes one of the band's most recognisable members. Then, in 1972, chance changes everything. When another member is unavailable, Lemmy ends up singing on a song called Silver Machine. The record becomes a surprise hit, reaching the British top 5 and turning him into a familiar voice for music fans across the country. For the next few years, Hawkwind tours relentlessly. Lemmy becomes accustomed to life on the road, spending countless nights travelling between venues, sleeping in vans, and performing before increasingly large crowds. The smell of cigarette smoke, beer and diesel fuel becomes part of everyday life. Success finally seems within reach, but trouble is never far away. In 1975, while touring North America, Hawkwind arrives at the Canadian border. Customs officials arrest Lemmy after discovering drugs in his possession. Although the charges are later dropped, the incident proves to be the final straw for the rest of the band. Not long afterwards, Hawkwind dismisses him. For Lemmy, the decision is a crushing blow. After years of struggle, he suddenly finds himself without a band and without a clear future. Yet defeat has never suited him. Rather than walk away from music, he decides to start again. Drawing on everything he has learned from years spent in clubs, festivals, and concert halls, he begins planning a new group. He wants it to be louder than the heavy metal bands of the day, faster than traditional rock and roll, and more aggressive than almost anything audiences have heard before. He already knows what he's going to call it: Motörhead. At that moment, it is little more than an idea, but within a few years it will become one of the most influential bands in rock history and transform Lemmy from a struggling musician into a legend. His greatest success is still ahead of him. In 1975, Lemmy Kilmister finds himself at a crossroads. Hawkwind has fired him, his career appears to be going backwards. And at nearly 30 years old, he has little to show for years spent chasing success. Many musicians would have taken the opportunity to reassess their lives. Some might have abandoned music altogether. Lemmy chooses a different path. Instead of starting over quietly, he decides to create the band he has always wanted to hear. Drawing on everything he has learned from rock and roll, heavy blues, and the raw energy beginning to emerge from the punk scene, he forms a new group. He names it Motörhead, borrowing the title from a song he had written shortly before leaving Hawkwind. At first, success is far from guaranteed. The early lineups are unstable, money remains tight, and record companies are uncertain what to make of them. Motörhead seemed too heavy for punk audiences and too rough for traditional heavy metal fans. Yet that strange position between genres becomes their greatest strength. The band's music is fast, aggressive, and unapologetically loud. Lemmy stands centre stage with his bass hanging low and his microphone tilted high above him. He sings upward into it with a gravelly voice that sounds as though it has been dragged across miles of rough road. Behind him, amplifiers roar at astonishing volume. Audiences have never heard anything quite like it. By the end of the 1970s, Motörhead is building a devoted following. Concert halls fill with leather jackets, denim and long hair. Fans arrive expecting chaos, and the band rarely disappoints. Their performances are relentless, driven by speed, volume, and an energy that seems almost impossible to sustain. Then comes the breakthrough. In 1980, Motörhead releases the album Ace of Spades. The title track becomes the band's signature song. Its opening bass line and explosive energy help define an entire generation of hard rock and heavy metal. Suddenly, Motörhead is no longer a cult act. The band is becoming famous around the world. As the years pass, Lemmy becomes one of the most recognisable figures in rock music. The mutton-chop sideburns, cowboy boots, black hat and rasping voice make him instantly identifiable. Yet what fans admire most is his authenticity. In an industry often filled with carefully managed images, Lemmy appears completely genuine. He says what he thinks, he lives how he wants, he answers to nobody. That independence earns him respect far beyond the world of heavy metal. Punk musicians admire him, rock stars admire him. Even artists whose music sounds nothing like Motörhead speak of him with affection. But the lifestyle that helps create the legend also begins taking its toll. For decades, Lemmy smokes heavily. Cigarettes seem almost permanently attached to his hand. He drinks enormous quantities of alcohol, particularly whiskey and Jack Daniels. Long nights, constant touring, and years of living at full speed gradually place enormous strain on his body. Remarkably, he appears almost indestructible. As the 1980s become the 1990s and the 1990s become the 2000s, Motörhead continues touring. New generations of fans discover the band. Younger musicians who grew up listening to Lemmy now perform alongside him. What once seemed like a rebellious experiment has become an institution. Yet time catches everyone. By the early 2000s, health problems are becoming more difficult to ignore. Years of smoking and drinking have taken their toll. Lemmy develops diabetes. Heart problems begin affecting his ability to perform. Concerts are occasionally cancelled as his health declines. For perhaps the first time in his life, his body is forcing him to slow down. Even then, he refuses to stop completely. The stage remains the place where he feels most alive. Fans continue packing venues to see him. Every performance carries a sense of determination, as though both the audience and the man on stage understand that these moments cannot last forever. In December 2015, just 4 days after celebrating his 70th birthday, Lemmy receives devastating news. Doctors diagnose him with an aggressive form of cancer. The disease is already advanced. There is little time. On the 28th of December 2015, Lemmy dies at his home in Los Angeles. He is 70 years old. The reaction is immediate. Tributes pour in from around the world. Musicians, actors and fans speak not only about his achievements, but about the man himself. Many describe him as one of the last true rock and roll originals, someone who remained completely loyal to his own principles, no matter how much the world around him changed. Motörhead comes to an end with his death. The band had always revolved around him. Without Lemmy, there can be no Motörhead, yet his influence does not disappear. The sound he helped create continues to echo through heavy metal, punk and hard rock. Countless musicians still point to Motörhead as an inspiration. New listeners continue discovering Ace of Spades and the band's vast catalogue of music. Perhaps more importantly, they discover the attitude behind it, the refusal to compromise, the determination to be yourself, the belief that life should be lived on your own terms. As tributes continue to arrive in the days following his death, fans gather outside clubs, bars and music venues across the world. Songs blast from speakers, glasses are raised, stories are shared. For many, it feels impossible to imagine a world without Lemmy in it. Yet the voice remains, the music remains, the legend remains, and somewhere in the minds of millions of fans, the roar of a Rickenbacker bass is still ringing through the speakers, louder than ever.